Okay, thank you everybody for the brief break, and we'll call the meeting back to order and welcome President Rosenberg.
Thank you, Chair Rude, members of the board. Good afternoon. Thank you for giving us a few moments to explain our plans for next year and out years and the results from this past year. Before I begin, I would like to introduce to you the members of our delegation who are here. Trustee Delano Gray on my far left, Trustee Leanne Sippen on my immediate left, our Provost Douglas Wurtzok, our CFO, our Vice Provost Elizabeth Behar, and our CFO Dr. Kenneth Jessel. So thank you for being here. This has been a very good year for FIU. Our medical school was fully accredited, reaffirmation of accreditation for nursing and public health. We graduated our 200,000th degree, a biology and physics major. We graduated our 1,000th law school degree. We also were honored, as was the rest of the state, when one of our very own graduates was a keynote poet at the presidential inauguration in January. He happens to be a STEM graduate, Mr. Vice Chair. His name is Richard Blanco. He's an engineer who recited a poem at the invitation of the White House. That was his, engineering was his first degree at FIU. His second degree was in creative writing. And so he had the opportunity to represent our entire state before the world in that January mega event. We also had the privilege this year of graduating the youngest graduate we've ever graduated, a gentleman whose name is Sky Choi, 16 years old. He started at FIU when he was 10 in dual enrollment classes. He has a timed degree, which might not otherwise be acceptable, in as much as he started when he was 10 and he graduated at 16. But still in all, it's evidence of, by the numbers, you can't always figure out what's going on.
But
so,
that did hurt your data, though, didn't it? 6-year graduation rate?
Well, I'm not going to begin with an apology. I'm trying to celebrate what we accomplished. But
average age of graduates, that could be some new data that we look at.
It did lower the number considerably, but we're very proud of Sky Choi and what he accomplished. We also had a record number of graduates, 11,500, and we continued to see the number of graduates leaving FIU going up. Okay. The university work plan, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this except to say that in terms of our mission, we're committed to high quality teaching, state-of-the-art research, and creative activity and collaborative engagement with our local and global communities. Our goal ultimately is to become a student-centered research university that is a solution center locally and globally, and I'll explain some of that a little bit later on in the presentation. But really what matters in this entire mix is our students and who they are, and there's no one better to talk about that than our trustee, Leanne Sippen.
Good afternoon. My name's Leanne Sippen. I'm a senior majoring in public relations. I wanted to thank you on behalf of the 50,000 students at FIU for your support. So basically, I believe that I'm a true representative of an FIU student. I commute to and from school every day. I am a minority student and I work part-time, 25 to 30 hours a week. As a majority institution, we represent what the country is going to look like in the future, I believe. And the diversity and exposure that FIU has given me, I know will help me to be more competitive in the job market once I graduate. This exposure just affirms how unique our institution is. And most of my classmates and friends, they have families to take care of. 67% of our students take care of family members, and compared to 42% nationally. And I feel that it's duly because of our first generation students who have to put in countless hours talking to their parents about how important it is to attend a university such as FIU. As one of 4 siblings in my family, 2 of which also attend FIU and one another SUS institution, I've been able to see the differences and the opportunities that FIU has given me. And I really feel that FIU's been able to provide a place that I can be engaged on campus, work more than part-time, as well as carry a full course load. And I feel that I've really been able to gain a college experience, and that I've been able to become a part of the FIU community and the Miami community as well. That's all.
Thank you, Leanne. The point here is that most of our students, unlike perhaps the more traditional experience that many in this room had, most of our students tend to organize their studies around their work. They organize their studies around their work because they don't have an option, they don't have an alternative. And of course that places special responsibilities and gives us special opportunities to make sure that we provide them with the highest quality education that we can possibly offer. Our work plan, just a couple of highlights of that in terms of the strategy. We see ourselves as an anchor institution for Greater South Florida. We have a lead role in the One Community, One Goal Jobs Initiative. Our responsibility is to lead the Academic Leaders Council, which is all the universities and colleges in Dade County, as well as the Dade County Public Schools, to help the community through the Economic Development Organization, the Beacon Council, address its objectives to generate employment in 7 identified industry sectors, of which we can identify at least 6 where we actively play a role. Of course, we spend a lot of time on business efficiencies. We think that's critically important for how we use the public's funds, and we're prepared to discuss that. At the national level, who we are is a function of where we are. It's a function of our demographics, no question. We are the largest producer of minority degrees in the United States. We are also deepening and expanding our role as the nation's leading producer of STEM degrees for minority students. We understand how important that is for the state. We also understand how important that is for the country, particularly because we are the nation's largest majority minority institution of higher education. Our work plan. Last year my theme was we get it. I'd like to think we still get it. And so we're keeping on that theme. We have key initiatives and investments. Frankly, they're the same as last year. We're going to continue to expand and deepen our graduation success initiative. We're very pleased that we have been able to demonstrate that it's starting to work. We've had significant improvements in our 6-year graduation rate. We've also had significant improvements in that area, that great bottleneck to student success, college algebra. We're focusing on STEM success, and we'll discuss that. We've just created this past year a STEM Transformation Institute, which we see as playing a key role, not just in ensuring that our institution continues to increase the number of STEM graduates, but that some of the techniques that we have successfully used are transferred throughout the country. We also are proud to let you know that we signed an MOU with the Miami-Dade County Public Schools to create a standalone science and technology school, high school, on our Biscayne Bay campus that we believe will be cutting edge and the best in Dade County, because it will directly interface with a number of our STEM faculty, research, and researchers, as well as curriculum that is being offered at the Biscayne Bay campus. We're also spending a lot of time on internships. We just received funding from the Miami Foundation, which is a Dade County foundation, to promote a regional talent development, which, stated in other terms, is to increase the number of internships being provided by Dade County business communities. Even before that support, we increased our internships by about 9% last year to over 3,000. We spent a lot of time on the math issue. I will not go too deep here. We created a math mastery lab, which is a state-of-the-art, high-tech, high-touch initiative. We have seen very significant improvements in completion rates by our students. Clearly, math has been a killing field for us with very low first-time pass rates, but we are now seeing significant growth. And I'm also very proud to tell you that we have made that Math Mastery Lab available at no cost to Title I high schools in Dade County that also have significant performance challenges. And we believe that's helped our Dade County public schools as well. Now, I want to point out, as it relates to our work plan, the context. That is to say, we do think a lot about what our benchmarks are doing out there. And we've identified a number of benchmarks and compared them along the 6-year graduation rate and then their percentage of underrepresented minorities, the percentage of full-time freshmen receiving Pell, and the percent of full-time undergraduates. We're not happy with where we are. We're not happy with that. However, when we compare to other similar large urban universities of enrollments over 20,000, we're not doing too badly. But we want to do better, and we get it, and that in part is what this work plan is organized around. As you know, you have 36 indicators, and I just want to spend a few moments on those indicators. And let me give you the overall takeaway in summary fashion. We've improved in a total of 19 indicators from last year. We're holding steady on 15, and we have declined on 3. That's the overall takeaway, 19, 15, and 3. On academic quality, our SAT score went from 1699 to 1704. We think it can go to 1710. We'd like to see it go higher. On high school GPA, we've held at 3.7. We're not too sure about that. We also have declined as a negative in postdoctoral appointees by 1. As it relates to efficiency, our graduation rate last year was 47%, having gone up the previous year from 41%. We're at 48% this year. We set an objective of 49%. I'm happy to talk about that. I understand many of you think that that may not be an aggressive enough goal. I'd be happy to talk about that. Our freshman retention rate remains at around 82%. The return on investment, we have increased the number of graduates from last year to this year at the undergraduate level by nearly 400 students, and we expect that to go up next year by nearly 400. We've also continued to increase the number of graduate degrees awarded. I believe FIU is now the second largest grantor of graduate degrees in the state university system. Our endowment this year actually, as a consequence of the last 2 months, went up to about $200 million. In terms of the work plan, return on investment, we held even as a percentage on the STEM degrees, but we actually increased the number of STEM degree graduates by about 80. We know we can do better. We get that. We held even on graduate as a percentage, even though we actually increased numerically the numbers of students who graduated. Part of that is because we grew. And as you grow, as you know, the percentages may or may not hold even. As it relates to our work plan, I am happy to tell you nonetheless that since 2008, 2009, we have increased the number of STEM graduates by about 31%. And there's no reason to believe that we can't continue to grow the numbers and hopefully the percentages. Performance indicators, bachelor's degrees awarded to minorities, 5,688 this past year, 2 years ago. This year was 6,021. So we continue to grow the number of bachelor's graduates, and those in strategic emphasis, they continue to grow. And indeed, degrees awarded to all underrepresented minorities, we're #1 in the country, as you can see from the data, roughly 4,920. As to the issue of growth, we do believe in smart growth. We do not expect to grow this year. We'll grow marginally, minimally next year and the year after. So we have heard your message. We have slowed down the growth, and we are focused on finding ways to graduate students more timely, even as the number of applications of qualified students continues to climb. We've had about a 47% increase over the last 3 years. Smart growth is also characterized by hiring great faculty. I'm really happy that we just recently hired Dr. Frank Mora, who served the U.S. government as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Policy in charge of Western Hemisphere Affairs. He started on Monday. We've also hired faculty, and this is just an example of the faculty we've hired in psychology, who have all distinguished themselves with the recognition. Now, why am I mentioning the issue of psychology? I know it's on the minds of people who matter to us.
Why would you?
And
No,
I want to go there.
He's looking at that side of the room.
Well, we didn't mention it.
I want to go there. I want to go there. It's interesting to note, I pulled up the number of degrees we've awarded, and you know what? Psychology continues to lead the pack. Even though we've had a very significant growth in the number of biology degrees, for instance, as a STEM area. Of course, in Miami, you could imagine that there are 4 business degrees in particular that are among the top 10 as well, given the nature, the transactional nature of our community. But I just want to focus on this for a moment as my time winds down. And let's go to the next slide, Mr. Provost. AIDS is a major public health issue in Florida. As a matter of fact, we have the 2nd highest rate of AIDS in the United States. Only New York has a higher rate of AIDS than does our state. And as the next slide will show, our community, Miami, in terms of infections per 100,000, leads the rate of infections. Jacksonville's right behind. So I don't want Mr. Delaney to get too comfortable. Jacksonville is right behind. And as a consequence, as a major challenge to our community from a health perspective, we've tried to step up to understand what the causes are, what the consequences are, and how to mitigate this impact. And so therefore, we in the last few years have hired people who are very consequential researchers in this area. Indeed, our research portfolio is about $25 million, mostly funded by NIH. The research areas, as you can see, focus on a variety of different approaches to reducing the incidence of AIDS. I said earlier we want to be a solution center. Clearly, first and foremost, we have to be a solution center for our students who may or may not have any other opportunity to get a full university education. But we also understand we have a responsibility to the community and the state. I think here's a really good example of how we're discharging that responsibility. So in summary, where will we be when we sit here next year? We will have admitted 4,700 new FTICs, roughly 8,100 new transfer students. That's who we are. We live on transfers. 4,000 new graduate students, 4,500 dual enrollment students from the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. We will award 12,000 degrees, a little over that, maybe 12,500. We will have hired 85 new and replacement faculty. We will have submitted 780 proposals for research. 600 new grants will have been awarded, and we will raise nearly $50 million all in terms of commitments and cash as a consequence of our fundraising efforts. That completes my time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I understand Governor Tripp has 10 questions, but I'm limiting him to 3.
Start by saying I'm not going to ask anything about finances because I understand and believe that you have the finest finance man in all of the South, Ken Jessel, and I don't want to take him on. Now, as you know, Mr. President, you're another case. I got to tell a little story one time. We were having an issue at FAU, and Mark was the chancellor, and he came to a luncheon that we had in Tallahasse. We had all of our board of trustees and our administrators there, and Mark and I got into kind of a heated debate, and he took me on, I took him on, and so we didn't really enjoy the lunch probably. Sometime later, he met my law partner at a wedding reception, and he asked him, you know, was I always such a jerk? And Dennis said, no, you ought to take him out for dinner, you guys can get along. And we broke bread, and we're getting along. The next year, we were having a meeting in Tallahasse, and Mark came over to the meeting, and when he showed up, he was in full SWAT gear. He said, I prepared for you, Norman, and I'm literally, he had all SWAT gear.
Been a great, I can imagine, been a great picture to have.
Yeah, we didn't get the picture. I just want to start by a statement that you have 53% of your students, 9,000, whose family income is below $40,000. Then you have 10% in the 40 to 60 range. So you have a good 60% of all of your students there. I just want to start this conversation a little bit, and we keep hearing the conversation about 4-year and 6-year graduation rate. We struggled with that at FAU. I'll bet you UCF will struggle with this as you. Do you know, given the kind of students you're going to take in, the time that they really in life have to put into education, about what is really a realistic number for that 60%, let's say, some number, that you could get to? And I'm not talking about how the University of Florida or Florida State can get there, but UCF, FAU, what is a realistic number that you think you could get to, graduating these people in their rate?
It's a good question, and we spend a lot of time on that. We do some soul searching, believe me. Probably in the 50s. I mean, the issue of time to degree, I wonder whether that time degree is just the way it is. It's 5.5. And we know that the average credit hours that our students take overall is about 9.8. The average for full-time students, and we've increased the number of full-time students, I think you've seen that in the data, is about 14 that they take. They may only pass 12, maybe 11.8. But here's the broader question. There's a group of people around this country that think that if we could get students to take more credit hours, that they could graduate more timely. Many of those students, to do that, would have to go into greater indebtedness. So truthfully, we're not satisfied with where our indebtedness is, but it's lower than most of our institutions. It's lower than the national average. I think it's about, 17,000. How high do we want to drive that indebtedness so that they could accelerate to get their degree? And truthfully, it might be better because they would then possibly move up in the earning spectrum, but they might drag around more debt. So I think there's a kind of a policy trade-off, particularly for those students, Mr. Governor Tripp. And 62% of our graduates are Pell grantees. So it shows you,
You know they're working, right?
And
They're working.
About 85% of our students work.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. When you do the 2+2 transfer, when you show us the GPA and the SAT scores, et cetera, do you include those 2+2 transfers in that number?
No, we don't.
So you might be higher if we had a formula in which you took that cohort of people and we said, here's how they're performing at our institution. So that number could push you a little bit higher. It just dawned on me that you have so many transfers that the question is, how are we accounting for their performance and how you're doing with them? And I think, Mr. Chairman, that might be something that we want to consider in some way.
Let me just, we have, of course, considered that. We've looked at it very closely. And there is, in any academic program, more of a recalibration of students' objectives in their first couple of years, so that if we look at all of our students coming in compared to the transfer students, then the transfer students appear to do somewhat better, but that's because most of the students who started in the community colleges, as you know, their graduation rate is in the low 30% for the AA degree, so that there's a lot of washout that's occurring there.
Yeah.
If we look at the students who have achieved 60 credits, then we find that the students who start at FIU and have achieved 60 credits are much more likely to graduate than the students who come to FIU with 60 credits.
Okay, one last question. This is a little different tack. Why is it going to take you 3 years to get your pass rate on exams better? I mean, isn't it a factor of the professors just doing better with the students that are there? I don't understand why it'll take you 3 years to get to a 0 fail rate.
Well, it's because of where we're starting from in one particular program. And so that one of the programs, we just almost made it this year, and we know we'll make it next year. The other program is one that had further to go, and it's realistic to say that it's going to take a couple years, starting with the changing pedagogical approaches and having a little bit more time for those students. So we have to have a second cohort go through before we're actually going to cross the threshold that we're anticipating.
Chairman asked, what program is that?
Physical therapy.
Thank you. Chair Colson.
The last couple of days I've been asking the different presidents, and yesterday, President Machen, we talked about what do we do about the Common Core and making sure our kids graduate with a real foundation, not just in STEM courses, but in history and English and economics and ethics and critical thinking. And how do we do a better job of that? And University of Florida has got this opportunity now to rethink some of the general ed that they're providing. Have you given that any thought? And is there a role for the board to step in and say, we need you to do more than you're doing?
Let me just start that off, and then I'll ask the provost. In essence, when you sit at an FIU graduation or an FAU graduation or UCF or USF, UNF, Florida Gulf, you're watching not just the Florida Gulf or the FIU graduate walk across the stage, but you're also watching the State College transfer walk across the stage, and he or she is coming in with a different pedagogical stream. And you're also watching the other college transfer, and you can see the numbers. We have a ton of transfer students that by law we have to take. So the end result is it's not going to be an FIU degree understood in the same way that you might understand a University of Florida degree, and how the Common Core may pervade more of the educational effort of that student than it will of a student coming from an urban university that characterize much of the students in our system. So I get the gist of your question, but it's a slightly different reality that we face in terms of our demographics.
Our faculty would love to have the opportunity that University of Florida has been afforded to be able to identify a segment of the core curriculum that would be devised and implemented by our faculty, that every student would have, that would identify this is what we feel an FIU student should have in terms of general knowledge. But currently only the University of Florida has that opportunity.
Thank you.
Chair Hosseini, Governor Hosseini.
Thank you. Mr. President, I mean, you and I have been to that movie before. We've had conversation about, you know, increasing enrollments, and you know, again, you came at last year and said, I get it. It's interesting, you know, I mean, when you started today and you said all the good things is happening, that's fair, you know, and I could respond and say lots of good things that you're doing. I agree with you, but we don't have that much time, so you get to say all the good things you're doing, and I get to say, you know, ask questions on the areas that you know, we have concern with. So, and you know, if you are going to grow the number of students, you know, and you and I had this conversation, you know, we want more quality, and you said you get that, you know. It's just that I think your view of quality and our view of quality may be a little bit different. For instance, you know, in STEM, you have it at 16% now, and then within the next couple of years, we at 17%. We really like to see that you, one more time, get it, you know, really take a deliberate, you know, actions to increase your STEM, you know, and I know we talked about lots of other degrees that are wonderful, they're great, they get jobs. You know, we're not saying to give us 50% of STEM, we just say get yourself to 20%, you know, if you're gonna grow the university past the 50,000 students you have. You know, don't open up the door just for anybody who wants to come in, so they don't graduate in 6 years, they're not in the degrees that they don't get jobs, you know. All we're asking is that give us something that we can say, okay, that FIU is on its way to get to ultimate goal of have a balanced, you know, a balanced university. And so my question is to you, have you specifically have said with your group, with your board, and say, what can we do to deliberately increase our STEM, and how do we get there? Instead of 1% in the next 3 years, maybe get ourselves to 20%. And you know, some of our universities in the last couple of days, they gave us numbers of they're going to grow, you know, 4% in the next couple of years, and 5%, even though they're pretty high. You know, have you done that? You know, do you have a specific conversation about STEM, which is one of the core performance measurement that we're going to have, and graduation rate, etc.?
Well, we continually and repeatedly talk about STEM, both at the board level as well as with leadership. And that's why we've had a 31% increase. It's not good enough. We're going to do better. The jobs, as you know, are also a challenge because our students follow the market. They're fairly market savvy. And as you know, we're doing pretty well in terms of degrees in terms of starting income for our graduates, and in terms of the percentage who actually, get jobs or go on to graduate school. We're right at the top. So yes, we've had that conversation, and we believe we're taking initiatives, but we're going to have to do better to hit that 20% if that's the target.
The president is too modest to mention it, but it is clear that he is a national leader in terms of this discussion, and he was the only university president invited to testify on it with the PCAST, which is the President's Council on Science and Technology, run out of the White House, and he's also a member of a new National Research Council that is looking specifically at how to do this nationally. So, we're a major voice not only locally but on the national scale in terms of this important issue.
Thank you.
Governor Morton.
Thank you. Contemporaneous with expanding your medical school, are you working proactively with institutions in the greater Miami area to build appropriate residency programs so we can keep our graduates here in the state of Florida?
Yes, we made the commitment to increase residencies at least as rapidly as we were increasing our graduation of new medical doctors, and with working with the West Kendall Baptist system, the Citrus Health and Broward Health, we have more than fulfilled that commitment. We have created more new residencies than new graduates that we had from our medical school class in the first graduation. We were, in terms of residencies, as you well know, Governor, it is a match process, so that we don't know how many of our students would have gone to residencies in Florida had they been offered residencies in Florida, but we do know that 13 of the 33 graduates did accept residencies in Florida, so that's 40% of them are going to residencies in Florida, which I would hold up against almost any other medical school that would be generating that percentage of their graduates having residencies in the state in which they got their medical education. We're also very pleased that another piece that we committed to when we had our medical school, which was that we were going to focus on primary care, and over 50% of our students chose residencies in primary care, so that's also a benchmark that very few medical schools would be able to match. We also had, of course, students that were incredibly successful. We had 100% match, which some of the more established medical schools did not have. And we had students who got their residencies at Harvard, Case Western, Albert Einstein, so that it's a matter of quality as well as meeting our full commitments with the establishment of our College of Medicine.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the 2013-2014 work plan for Florida International University, excluding those sections of the work plan that require additional regulatory or procedural review or approval pursuant to law or board regulations, and that the committee accepts the out-year portions of the work plan? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.